There's two issues with doing this series for Alexander and Barbarian invasion. Firstly, there's not that many historical factions at the time that I feel are not already present in game. Secondly, I feel these two games work great with their faction count as is, and no more are really needed to complete it. But still, it's an interesting series, so let's see what we can do. And yes, we will be going by the same rules. Cannot add settlements, and they must have historical backing. Let's begin with 5th place, a faction I do want to see, but is not essential. Alexander Total War Nabateans, or Arabs, I'm happy either way. This faction I can imagine will own the Arabia region. The reason I think they would work is a historical one. In-game, Persia is shown to control Arabia, which they did not do historically, so it would be nice to have a different faction down there to separate it from Persia, for accuracy reasons. However, gameplay-wise, it's kind of pointless. We have to stay to the rules of the game. Macedon will be the only playable faction. In addition to that, their unit roster really won't be that unique. Their settlement is poor and mostly defenceless, so they won't really be able to get to higher tiers of units. So there really is no point in having them. That's why they're all the way down in 5th place, but they would have been nice, which is why they made it onto the list at all. 4th, we have Barbarian Invasion, the Alans. Again, they would fit historically. There's argument to say they were the largest horde faction that's not present in the game. I can really see this faction as being cavalry based and starting between the Vandals and the Huns. However, this is the issue, and why they're only in 4th place. They play like the Huns, they spawn near the Huns. What is the point in them? Gameplay wise, they would not be unique or that interesting and feel more like a copy and paste. And so I kinda understand why they did not make it into the game, but still they deserved a spot on this list for historical purposes. Okay, now those first two would have been nice to see, but not that functional in game, so they appeared very low. However, these top 3 are factions that I think could work for the historical and gameplay side of things. 3rd, Alexander Total War, India. I know what you may be thinking, India is in custom battles, and true they are, but they are not present in campaign. I really think an India faction as a culture faction, used to represent all Indian nations, would be very interesting to see. Of course, with the condition that they are also made accessible, so they can actually be invaded, unlike in-game where it's just cut off by a river. Like Arabia, they are shown incorrectly, as being under Persian control, and again, they will be just a one-state province. However, historically, and especially to Alexander, India was so much more. Many battles were fought against the Indians, and if they were to start with large stacks of troops, like the Dahe do, then India could provide a very interesting and unique final challenge for Alexander. For today's honourable mentions, as always, I have gone for factions that could have worked nicely from a gameplay perspective, but are less reliable on the historical side. I really like the Romano-British event for Barbarian Invasion, and it would have been nice to see that elsewhere. Italy, Greece, Egypt, Iberia maybe. These factions won't be playable, but could add an interesting, nice and unique touch to the game in other areas. As I said though, they did not make it onto this list due to the lack of historical backing. Back to it. 2nd, Barbarian Invasion, and the Hephalites, also known as the White Huns. There is no real connection to this faction and the Huns, yet they fought in a very similar manner. So you may ask, why have the Alans so low, yet highly value this faction? Well, it's all because of their starting location. The Alans start between two other hordes, meaning they will probably take the same route as them, and so feel more like a copy and paste faction. However, as Attila fans know, the White Huns start more within the Sassanid Empire, which makes them much more unique. Of course, a series of balance changes would be needed to incorporate this faction, but once those are made, I really feel this faction could add a lot more flavour to the Middle East, which in-game I feel is lacking. And last, but far from least, number 1, the faction I want the most, and it's for Barbarian invasion. Similar to the White Huns for adding flavour to the Middle East, I went with the Ghassanids. This faction would hold the in-game region of Petra. This is a region that lacks flavour compared to the rest of the world, and having another faction down here could make it much more interesting. A unique roster will be possible, adding loads of unique units. It would also add an additional challenge to the Eastern Roman Empire, which has a much easier experience than the West. Of course, they will be a one-state province, but that does not mean they are easy to destroy, as I feel they should also have a horde ability to strengthen them a bit more and make them pose a real threat to the Eastern Romans. Although historically it is equal in value as the rest, gameplay-wise, I really do think it could have been interesting. So there we have it, my list. What do you think? Do you agree or do you disagree with the factions or the ranking order? Subscribe to get notified of more. My goal is to try and cover every title and most DLC with this series, and I think some of the newer games could certainly be much more interesting. Anyway, subscribe to get notified of more, share with anyone you think will be interested. Until the next one, goodbye.